Our democracy is broken. It's gotten so bad that I don't even waste my time voting. A lot of political scientists will agree that the two-party system is completely obsolete. Here's how the Moole Point System will fix all of our issues. Alright guys, I'm going to narrate to you something that I've already written. I used the help of AI for this. Obviously the concept itself intuitively was originated by me. I'm no political scientist, but I understand the flaws of our system, and I've become a little bit of familiar through some study about certain concepts that affect voting systems. So we're going to dive into this here, okay? So the Moole Point System is a proposed electoral framework designed to address several major structural problems present in modern democratic elections, including two-party dominance created by winner-take-all or first-past-the-post voting, and how that will occur over the course of many election cycles, inevitably, when you use first-past-the-post. And we'll also talk about the spoiler effect that discourages third-party voting, eliminating strategic lesser evil voting, which doesn't allow people to express themselves democratically to their fullest, gerrymandering through district manipulation, excessive campaign finance influence, which is a huge issue, and that's almost separate from the voting system itself, but we'll talk about that. Limited voter preference data collected by current voting systems. Of course, it's you vote for one person, and if you have a certain preference and, you know, hey, I wanted Trump to win, but, you know, I could have stomached Biden. I can't stomach Hillary. I can't stomach Bernie. You know, if that was, you know, there's a lot of people probably in that category, right? Or vice versa. Hey, Bernie's my guy. You know, Hillary, I like Hillary. Biden's okay, but I can't zero for Trump, right? So we need to be able to capture those preferences as well, and there needs to be more democratic data collected through our elections. This system replaces single-choice voting with a structured point allocation model that captures nuanced voter preferences while encouraging consensus-building candidates. Okay? So the core structure of the system, each voter will receive 25 points to distribute among candidates. All right, so you get 25 points. Voting rules. Minimum points you can use are 21. You have to use 21 points, okay? Now you can choose not to use 4 of those points, and we'll get into that, and you'll see why as we get into that. But we don't want this to be too drastically different, you know, in terms of voter to voter, inter voter weighting and the strength of their voice. We don't want it to be too different, okay? Now, maximum points to a single candidate is 12. We're going to say we can give 12 points to a single candidate max. That encourages variety and, again, coalition building. Now, of course, you can still weight your candidate much more heavily within that 12. Points must be distributed across at least 3 candidates, okay? Now, we'll get into more of these points, and we're going to have a lot more candidates than what is available in our modern day, and that's going to be one of the big things that we need is more variety, not just 2 parties. So that's going to be a part of it. But as far as the system itself, points must be distributed across at least 3 candidates. Each selected candidate must receive at least 4 points. Okay, so each selected candidate must, out of the 3 people you pick, they each have to get 4 points minimum. Okay, now you can then allocate them up as much as you want. But you basically have to, let's say you really like a guy, you want to give him 12 points, right? 2 more people have to get 4 points, and then you got to allocate those points to other people as well. And it's, even if, you know, if it's that way, this strategic lesser evil thing is captured, but it's not done in a way where voters can just simply abandon their preferred candidate. You see what I'm saying? If you wanted to vote for Gary Johnson, you're not going to be able to just not vote for Gary Johnson and vote for Biden because you don't want Trump. You see what I'm saying? You're going to have to weight that in a certain way. So that'll actually enforce the use of your voice, right? So yeah, I mean, example ballot, candidate A may get 12 points, candidate B might get 7 points, C might get 6 points, and everybody else gets nothing, right? That's an example. Votes are aggregated by summing the points each candidate receives. The candidate with the highest total points wins. Go figure, right? All right, ballot access requirements. To ensure voters have meaningful choices while preventing ballot flooding, a minimum of 7 candidates should appear on ballots whenever possible, okay? So obviously with lower, state elections and municipal elections especially, that may be more difficult. But on the federal level, we got to have a minimum of 7 candidates, point blank, period. There's plenty of demand. We should not have an issue hosting 7 candidates, okay? Debate hosts should include at least 7 candidates when eligibility thresholds are met. Now, the primary major news networks, we're going to have to address the media issue as well. The fact that, these these big major media wings will influence elections. There's no way. That's not something that's considered in this in the justification for this point voting system. That's something that needs to be handled independently, but we need to address that as well as a democracy. Okay. Debate eligibility. A candidate qualifies for nationally televised debates if they meet either a 2% national polling average, relatively low, right? Relatively low, but you're trying to get inclusion here. Okay. We don't want just the big guys, and we lose like a third or even a bigger portion of voters who are passionate about candidates who don't have a chance with like Bernie Sanders, for example, guys like that. So we want to be able to have people exercise their voice in favor of their favorite candidates. Okay. Now it might not matter, right? It might not matter, but it may not make him win the election, but it can allow people to vote for Bernie without ruining the chance of Biden winning entirely, right? The spoiler effect starts to get limited with that. Or a signature threshold demonstrating baseline public support would be good for that would be another way for a candidate to qualify, all right, for nationally televised debates. Suggested signature thresholds, this is again up for debate. This is not what I've spent the focus on making this, coming up with the system, the video. Presidential, so these signature thresholds could maybe change, but presidential elections, 200,000 verified signatures, something in that ballpark nationally could be good. Again, we want to keep this low. I know it sounds low, but we want to keep these thresholds low to allow people to participate in the democratic process. If people don't vote for them, then they don't vote for them. That's that, right? But you are not inhibiting people who don't have necessarily the same financial backing as the big guys from voting, which is a disaster. State elections scaled proportionally, local elections scaled appropriately as well based on the population with those signature thresholds. These thresholds ensure debate inclusion is based on measurable public support rather than media gatekeeping. That's a huge issue right now. Media gatekeeping and just media control and influence on elections is huge. We need to eliminate gerrymandering. So that's the fourth point, elimination of gerrymandering. We would need to, this is kind of again separate from the voting system itself, but these are things that work in synergy, right? They're synergistic improvements to the system. One won't work without the other, or not nearly as well at least. So gerrymandering needs to be eliminated. The Moole Point System eliminates district-based distortions by aggregating votes across the entire jurisdiction. Municipal offices counted citywide, state offices counted statewide, federal offices counted nationally. I know there are going to be a lot of political scientists and people who review this system at any point in time that are very anti this, right? Because there's the argument that less populated states get less of a voice this way. And again, this is something that needs to be eliminated. I wanted to call attention to it, but there may be a better way to do that. Again, the focus on this video and what I'm trying to suggest here is more strictly oriented towards the voting system itself, okay? The actual mechanics of the vote. The gerrymandering and whether this is done on a district-wide level, whether this is done, how this is implemented, I think is going to be, there are going to be little things to tinker out. Now, here's the thing, though. I will say this. Basing this on a popular vote, right, nationally, given that it's a point system and it's not a first-past-the-post system, I think does somewhat address the issue of big cities being overrepresented. Okay, and let me tell you why. Because people are going to be able to vote for more than one candidate. So you'll be able to express your voice. Obviously, these large liberal cities are going to have more of an influence, but based on the point voting and the way that weighting works, we'll be able to assuage that a little bit. You're never going to fully eliminate that, and a lot of people will argue that the electoral system nowadays is disproportionate in the other direction, right? That the conservative small towns have each of their votes counts for more. So there's really no way to fully fix that issue, okay? Point blank, there's not going to be a way to fix that fully. But we'll need some political scientists to step in and discuss that. I'm just a guy with an idea, okay? And this is a great idea, I think. Removing district-based outcomes prevents manipulation through boundary drawing. Obviously, everybody agrees that needs to be dealt with. So, okay, point 5, how the system addresses major electoral problems. Number 1, eliminates the spoiler effect. Okay, we talked about this. Traditional plurality voting forces voters to choose only one candidate, discouraging support for smaller or emerging candidates. The Moole Point System allows voters to distribute points across multiple candidates, meaning voters can support alternative candidates without unintentionally helping their least preferred candidate win. Okay, number 2, capturing richer voter preference data. Now this is a huge one. Traditional elections collect only a single data point per voter. Okay, so it's not a great use of our democratic voices. And a lot of the times we're not able to capture the nuance of our political opinions through a vote, through a first past the post, winner take all voting system. The Moole system captures strength of preference, secondary preferences, tertiary preferences, and coalition compatibility. This produces a much more accurate picture of voter sentiment. 3, encouraging consensus candidates. Because voters must allocate points to multiple candidates, candidates benefit from being broadly acceptable rather than appealing only to a narrow base. This incentivizes coalition building, moderation, and broad appeal. This will solve the echo chamber problem, right? What we have nowadays is we have kind of guys who are further right and then guys who are further left. The Democrats always have this issue in their primaries of electability. Should we take the guy who's more popular within the party, Bernie Sanders, or should we go with Biden because of electability? We need to capture these white people in the middle, essentially, right? Not to make it so, but that's what it is, right? And so that's something that the Democrats deal with all the time. I think the Republicans are less affected by that, but that, of course, was an issue. I mean, that was a talking point in 2016 for Trump as well. Should we really run Trump? But I think Trump is a little bit closer to the center than Bernie, right? He's not as far right as Bernie is left, and I think I used to be a really strong Bernie supporter, but anyway, we're getting off topic. But look, the point is, right, that I feel like this solves these issues, okay, and it helps. People who are in the center will collect more points as second or third preferences, okay, if people are galvanized to vote left, because you have to vote for second and third preferences in the system, all right? And people might not like that. There might be voters that don't like that, but it doesn't matter, okay? We're going to capture the Democratic data here and what their preferences are, because even if they hate the next guy, they're going to have to put 4 points to the next guy. I mean, I can't imagine that out of 7 to 10 candidates, you only want one guy and you refuse to vote for the next guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's going to be, yeah. We'll dive deeper into that here in a second. Reducing negative campaigning. Point 4, as to how the system addresses major electoral problems. In winner-take-all systems, candidates benefit from attacking opponents. This is a huge deal, right? In the Moole Point System, candidates benefit from also being voters' second or third choice, which discourages purely negative campaign strategies. You have to talk about your own platform, okay? Now, look, I do actually like what Trump is doing these days with the institutional investors being removed from real estate. Tariffs, I think, are a good idea long term. Unfortunately, I don't think that they're going to work because of the fact that the other guys are going to come in and remove that. I do think that inhibiting legal immigration to a degree is probably a good thing for the citizens of this country, okay, in a way. And there are some, of course, drawbacks to that as well, but I like the intention there, okay? And then, of course, the illegal immigration thing, that's kind of a common sense issue. So I like what Trump's doing, but he did run a lot of negative campaigns. A lot of what he did was attacking other people, bringing them down and kind of embarrassing them so as to garner the vote. That won't work in the future, and I think we all agree that it's a good thing that it won't. And I'm not saying that Trump's a bad candidate. I'm not saying that Trump's a bad president for that. And he was fucking hilarious. I'll be honest with you. Like, I thought he was funny as hell. All right, when I go back, I mean, I didn't like him at the time because I was like afraid of racism, and I mean he's really not that racist. Anyway, I'm not gonna do all this, but if you go back and watch some of those videos, he's hilarious, and that was very entertaining. But we got to take the democratic process seriously, okay? Number 5, increasing voter engagement. Distributing points encourages voters to think more carefully about their full set of preferences rather than making a single binary choice. This increases voter investment in the outcome and encourages more thoughtful civic participation. Okay? So that's important. Now, of course, there are going to be idiots that just randomly allocate their points and don't put any thought into it, but you're not going to be able to, that'll probably average out. You know what I mean? It'll cancel out in any direction. You know what I'm saying? If people who just turned 18 or whatever, they're just running into the ballot, they're like, fuck it, 4, 5, 6, whatever, bro. Like, that could happen, but I don't think that that's going to I don't think that's going to influence the election in a meaningful way. That's going to be a smaller percentage. Most people do take it seriously, and most people will try to educate themselves a little bit. And that's important. I think that's important. I think it's if you can just walk in and be, we have a lot of colored people, right? I'm brown. There's a lot of people in with my level of melanin who will just vote Democrat no matter what, and they won't put any further thought into it. Now, if you have to go look into the candidates who come from the left and decide who you want to vote for, you might learn a thing or two, and that might actually change your perspective, right? You might be like, okay, well, maybe I don't agree with this. This guy, he says that we should do this. This guy says we should do this. So it just gets people engaged, and that's important. Okay, 6, minimum point allocation requirement. To prevent strategic underallocation, commonly known as bullet voting, right, which is a point system flaw, okay, that comes with point systems historically. Voters must allocate at least 21 of their 25 available points. Without this rule, a voter could heavily support a preferred candidate, satisfy the minimum support requirement for 2 additional candidates, and then deliberately leave the remaining points unused in order to avoid helping other candidates. We don't want that, okay? We don't want that. We want people to use their points, at least 21 of them, because then we get a full sense of rich democratic data from each voter, okay? And that's going to show us to what degree do they prefer this candidate. They only gave him 4, okay, and then they gave the next guy 3, or they gave another guy 4. They gave 3 guys 4, right? You see what I'm saying? This is gonna help the election to a great degree. By requiring voters to distribute most of their available points, the system captures meaningful secondary and tertiary preferences and produces a richer representation of voter sentiment. All right, anti-clone candidate safeguard. Number 7. To prevent coordinated factions from gaining an unfair advantage by running multiple nearly identical candidates, the Moole point system includes an anti-clone safeguard. Rules, all right? Only one candidate per registered political party may appear on the ballot for a given office. All right, so you can't have Republicans running 4 guys and funding all of them, and you can't have Democrats doing that either. It's just nonsense. We're not going to do that. You get one guy as the Republican Party. The Green Party gets 1. Democrats get 1. Okay, and it's going to be fair. Now, if you're the most powerful political parties, that shouldn't create such an issue for you. Okay, you should still be able to capture most of these points if you really feel that you are the most popular. You are the most. You are the best political party that represents the most constituents. This shouldn't be a problem. You should still get the most points, right? If there's more nuance to this than that, which I believe there is, I think many people believe there is. I don't think that the Republicans and Democrats actually represent the majority of Americans. Okay, either of them. I think there are a lot of people closer to the center. There are a lot of people further left. There are a lot of people further right. And they all need to be able to vote appropriately and use their voice accordingly, okay? Nick Fuentes should be able to run for president. Yes, he's potentially regarded as a racist. Doesn't matter. If people in this country are racist, it's a democracy, okay? If people are white supremacists, and that's what happens to be the majority in the country, then it's important that this country is legislated in a white supremacist way. I want you to let that sink in, okay? And I want you to really understand that that's the truth. That is how democracy works, okay? If you don't like it, leave. Okay, to prevent coordinated factions from getting an unfair advantage by running multiple nearly identical candidates, the Moole point system includes an anti-clone safeguard. And on the flip side of that, if there are people who believe that, you know what, I'm not going to get into it because it's going to sound like I'm making fun of stuff. But you get the idea, right? Like, this is the point. Rules. Only one candidate per registered political party, not local, may appear on the ballot for a given office. Coordinated clone candidate strategies in which multiple candidates run as an organized slate representing the same faction or campaign apparatus are prohibited. If candidates are found to be operating as a coordinated slate intended to manipulate point distribution, election authorities may disqualify additional candidates beyond the first qualified candidate. Number 8, campaign finance structure, another huge piece that works in synergy with the point system itself. The Moole point system strongly favors low campaign spending limits. Example, preferred caps. Local elections, $50K to $100,000. State elections, around $250,000. Federal elections, scaled appropriately. The goal is lowering financial barriers to entry. Right now, privately funding campaigns is destroying democracy. It's absolutely destroying democracy because rich and powerful people are able to exercise their voice to a much larger degree on either side. It's a huge problem. Okay, it is a huge problem. The goal is lowering financial barriers to entry. Ideas and ideology should dominate the political space, not finances, okay? Modern elections often require tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. effectively preventing capable leaders without wealthy donor networks from running viable campaigns. Lower spending limits would allow trusted community leaders to run, reduce donor influence, prevent financial arms races, increase candidate diversity, shift campaigns towards ideas and voters. Huge, important. Ideas and voter engagement rather than advertising saturation. Okay. Number 9, user interface design for simplicity. This is just a detail of it. This is just kind of like the practical side of it. Modern voting interfaces can make this system extremely intuitive. Step 1, candidate selection. The voter first selects 3 candidates they wish to support. This will be the first screen, right? You pick 3 guys. Who are the guys you want to support? You have to support. Pick 3, mandatory. Then it'll take you to the next screen. Step 2, point allocation interface. You now get candidate A, candidate B, candidate C, candidate E, D, whatever, E. And then you get a bar with little bars going up to 12. And the first 3 guys you pick, the first 3 guys or girls you picked, will have 4 already in there at a minimum. Now you can click back at the bottom left and change that or whatever. We're not gonna lock you in, right? But you get 4, 4, 4, and then 0, 0, 0, and then you have pluses and minuses on each of those. And you can allocate those points any way you want. It'll show you the 25 at the top. And yeah, I mean, basically 21 minimum. You can't move forward until you've allocated 21. Each selected candidate begins with 4 points automatically assigned. Each candidate then has a bar ranging from 0 to 12 points. Voters can increase or decrease allocations using simple visual controls. That's the point allocation interface. That's the second screen. The flexible allocation piece, step 3. Voters may distribute their remaining points however they wish until they have allocated at least 21 points. This interface makes the process simple, visual, and intuitive. So it's not so complex. When you walk in, there's 2 steps. You pick 3 people, and then now you can allocate points on the second screen. Boom, you're done. Okay, that's it. Intuitive design philosophy. Okay, the 10th piece here. The Moole Point System was developed through intuitive reasoning about the structural flaws of modern elections. While I'm not a political scientist or election system specialist, the rules were designed to address the most obvious and widely discussed problems in current electoral systems. The spoiler effect, of course, 2-party dominance. I'm a third-party guy, okay? I would never vote for the Democrats or the Republicans, okay? And I don't vote because it's a fucking joke. It's a waste of my time. It's an insult to my intelligence, all right? If I were to vote, you know, it wouldn't be a spoiler on my part because I don't agree with, you know, I need a party that's not sponsored by AIPAC, right? So that's one thing. For me, I wouldn't have voted for the Democrats or the Republicans anyway, so it's not a spoiler effect if I go vote for the third party. But it is a waste of my time, okay? And I don't like wasting my time. The spoiler effect, 2-party dominance, strategic lesser evil voting, which is, I think, a large reason a lot of people voted for Hillary, right? They were not inspired or galvanized by Hillary, but they continue to vote for her for just because of the lesser evil side of it. Gerrymandering, excessive campaign finance influence. So these are some just widely discussed problems in current systems. The system is intentionally simple and intuitive. Political scientists and election experts may further analyze, critique, or refine aspects of the model. In fact, I invite that. I would really like this to be refined and implemented, not just talked about. And I think that, you know, for the most part, this is not going to be, you know, the aliens might find this once humanity's extinct and be like, wow, this guy's a genius. They should have listened to him. But I don't think it's actually going to be implemented, right? There's a lot of, again, bullshit, like power protect itself. So it's going to be hard to get this implemented. But in any case, this is a good idea, I believe. However, at a conceptual level, the structure directly addresses the major structural weaknesses present in current election systems. The goal of the Moole Point System is to provide a more accurate reflection of voter preferences while encouraging broader consensus in democratic outcomes. Summary, okay, let's just conclude this here. And there are a couple points here that I want to make, actually, and we'll get back to the summary. All right, so recently I watched a Veritasium video as a part of my research on this, and it was about voting systems. And so we're going to dive into the relationship to Condorcet paradox, the Condorcet paradox, and alternative voting. Okay. Another advantage of the Moole Point System is that it reduces the instability that can arise in ranked or sequential voting systems, including problems related to Condorcet's paradox. In a Condorcet cycle, collective preferences can become inconsistent. So transitivity is a property of voting systems that is violated by this paradox, right? I mean, it's kind of like it's a possibility on a fringe case that this happens. So, for example, okay, collective preferences can become inconsistent. For example, a majority prefers candidate A over candidate B, a majority prefers candidate B over candidate C, and a majority prefers candidate C over candidate A. Okay, this produces a circular preference structure with no clear winner. And that's the problem with alternative voting. This addresses that. Obviously, it's a point system. Traditional ranked voting systems and alternative voting, instant runoff voting, right? Any of the number things you can call them, can also produce unintuitive outcomes. In those systems, candidates are eliminated sequentially, which can sometimes cause a broadly acceptable or moderate candidate to be eliminated entirely early in the counting process. Once eliminated, that candidate can no longer accumulate support, even if they might have been the most widely acceptable option overall, right? Just because they got the least votes. The Moole Point System avoids these elimination order distortions because all candidates remain in the tally simultaneously and voters express their preferences through weighted point allocation. Instead of recording only rank order, the system captures strength of preference. This means the final result reflects the aggregated intensity of voter support across all candidates. Because voters distribute points across multiple candidates, the system produces a more complete picture of overall public preference and reduces instability seen in certain ranked choice systems. There is still going to be some strategic allocation, of course, that's going to exist. There's nothing you can do about it. But the impact of the strategic lesser evil, or not wanting to be a spoiler effect, fall victim to that decreases greatly because you have to give 4 points to 2 guys at least, and you can only give 12 to your favorite person. So that still leaves another 3. Yes, another 2 points you have to allocate after you do that. And so, 1 point, but you get the idea, right? So, yeah. So voters distribute, more complete picture of overall public preference and reduces instability seen in certain ranked choice systems. Relationship to Arrow's impossibility theorem. Arrow's impossibility theorem demonstrates that no voting system based purely on ordinal rankings can simultaneously satisfy all fairness criteria when aggregating preferences among 3 or more candidates. Okay? This is not an ordinal ranking system. So this is cardinal preference data, and that's addressed as well. Traditional voting systems record only the order of voter preferences, or alternative voting systems do. The Moole Point System instead collects cardinal preference data by allowing voters to express the strength of their support through point allocation. By capturing preference intensity rather than only rank order, the Moole Point System incorporates additional information about voter utility that traditional ranking systems ignore. While no voting system can satisfy all theoretical fairness criteria simultaneously, the Moole Point System reduces several practical distortions present in purely ordinal voting systems by incorporating preference-weighted data into the aggregation process. This preference-weighted structure provides a more detailed and continuous representation of voter sentiment across the electorate. Okay? So those are some big, in the political science space, some big paradoxes and issues, okay? So, all right. Finally, to conclude the summary, the Moole Point System introduces a preference-weighted voting structure that eliminates the spoiler effect, weakens two-party dominance, removes gerrymandering, encourages consensus candidates, reduces polarization, expands voter choice, lowers financial barriers to running for office, prevents bullet voting through a minimum allocation requirement, and prevents clone candidate manipulation through a one candidate per party rule. By allowing voters to distribute points across multiple candidates, the system captures a more accurate picture of public preferences while strengthening democratic legitimacy. So, now look, there are going to be ways to point out weaknesses in the system, and I think that intuitively this is a good idea. I'm not saying it's perfect. For example, only forcing 4 points minimum. The reason I picked, you're going to have to make some trade-offs, right? If you enforce a 4-point minimum, then that leaves just 1 point if if a lot of voters are going to come in with a guy they want to give 12 points to, right? So then you have 4 points, and maybe there's a third preference. You got to take it away from your top guy. People are not going to be willing to do that. A fourth preference, that is, but third backup preference to your person. That person may only get 1 point, but hey, that's shown, and maybe that doesn't fully reflect. Okay, with respect, what we could do also is multiply this out and give somebody 100 points, make it 48 points max, 16 points minimum to the second 2 candidates, and you still have a whole bunch of points, right, till the minimum, and you can give more points up to 25. I think that this is the best way to do it. I kind of tinkered with it myself. I think that this balances a lot of the trade-offs that you're going to have to make by changing some of these limits, and it's just intuitive. Okay, I haven't done the research. Obviously, we have never seen this implemented. We haven't simulated this. That's probably necessary before this goes into play, but intuitively, I think this system is pretty much as good as you can get it. And there's a theory out there, and I forget what it's called, but you should make decisions once you feel 80% ready. right? You can sit there and suffer from paralysis by analysis, trying to capture that extra 20% of information, 25% of information. But if you have 70 to 80% of the information you need to make a decision, go fire. Because over the course of the long term, making these decisions, that's going to, executing is more important than having all the information and making a perfect decision every single time. You're going to paralyze yourself. You're going to be immobile. You're going to be stuck with a two-party system for a much longer than is necessary. So go, just fire it away. You know what I mean? Go, let's get started. Let's put this into play. That's my suggestion. Of course, who's going to listen to me? I'm just a guy. I'm not a fucking billionaire. And that's unfortunate. That really is, because that's the way the system works. So I think that this point system is a prerequisite, okay, or something like this, something along these lines, to a real democratic process. So that's the video, man. Look, comment. I want to get your ideas. If there are any people who want to really take this and try to develop it a little further, that's a good idea as well. Please feel free. I think that'd be a great, karmic deed to do, right? To go ahead and develop this further. So feel free to do that. I appreciate you watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Peace and love.